When they moved to Flagstaff, Kody reportedly told her, "This will be a good time to have a new beginning for us." He kept the possibility alive. Just enough to keep her invested. Just enough to keep her waiting. Just enough to avoid fully closing the door. But never enough to truly repair anything. The apology tour was framed as growth. What it actually showed was stagnation. Same patterns. Same defensiveness. Same inability to fully hear the women speaking. But something else changed. The women. Christine set boundaries. She brought David. She called the apology weird to Kody's face. She refused to entertain nostalgic, romantic storytelling as closure. Janelle listened politely and chose herself. She didn't need his apology to move forward. She had already detached. And Meri? Meri refused to be shut down. She defended her friends. She named the performance. She stayed steady. The apology tour didn't prove Kody had changed. It proved the women had. Viewer reaction when Tell-All Part 3 aired. Social media lit up. Christine's reaction to Meri became one of the most talked about moments of the entire special. Viewers weren't just focused on the confrontation. They were focused on the smile, on the pride, on the solidarity. Fans commented that it was powerful to see Christine support Meri despite their distance. Others said they wished reconciliation were possible but respected that both women had chosen boundaries instead. The consensus? Meri found her voice. And people were proud. But there was a deeper takeaway. Christine's support meant something because it didn't come from closeness. It came from understanding. It showed that you can acknowledge someone's strength without needing them in your daily life. You can celebrate someone's growth without rebuilding a broken relationship. Solidarity doesn't require intimacy. And that's a powerful message. When you leave a toxic situation, you don't owe your former abuser reconciliation. You don't owe fellow survivors lifelong friendship. You owe yourself honesty. And sometimes, from a distance, you can still cheer when someone else finally claims theirs. The 32-year journey to fully grasp the weight of "you're not going to shut me down anymore," you have to look at the timeline. Meri marries Kody at 20 years old. She believes in plural marriage. She believes in the dream. Janelle joins the family. Adjustment begins. Christine joins. The family grows. So, do the emotional layers. Meri gives birth to Leon, her only biological child. For years after that, she tries to have more children. Month after month. Year after year. Silence. A miscarriage at 10 weeks. Around this time, intimacy reportedly fades. The distance widens. Sister Wives premieres. The family enters the public eye. Robyn enters the marriage. Meri legally divorces Kody, so he can adopt Robyn's children. Robyn offers to be Meri's surrogate, a storyline that stretches across seasons, heavy with emotion, complicated with power dynamics. And through every phase, expansion, heartbreak, public scrutiny, spiritual restructuring, Meri stayed. Hoping, adjusting, enduring. So when she finally looked at him in 2026 and said calmly, "You're not going to shut me down anymore," it wasn't about that one conversation. It was about 32 years. 32 years of being talked over. 32 years of being minimized. 32 years of trying to be enough. And in that single sentence, she reclaimed all of it. Not loudly. Not angrily. Just clearly. And sometimes clarity is the most powerful rebellion of all. He brings up her friends. "Please ask your friends to keep their opinions about me to themselves." Now for context, Meri's closest friends, Jen Sullivan and Brandy, have been vocal about how Kody treated her. They defended her publicly. They refused to let her be painted as the villain. And Kody hates that. Earlier in the season, he admitted he confronted Meri about it. He said he got in her face on the phone and told her she needed to have her friends shut their mouths. He admitted he berated them. And then he claimed she took it really personally. Of course she did. You attacked the only people who stood by her when you didn't. So when he brings it up again during what is supposed to be an apology meeting, it becomes crystal clear. This isn't reconciliation. This is control. But this time, Meri doesn't shrink. She doesn't nervously laugh. She doesn't soften the blow. She looks him directly in the eye and says, calm and steady, "I'm going to tell you this, Kody. You're not going to shut me down anymore. I'm going to finish what I'm saying." And in the studio, watching that playback, Christine's entire face changes. Her eyes widen. A slow smile spreads, because she recognizes it. That tone, that certainty, that refusal to be steamrolled. Meri continues, "When I'm not treated well, the people closest to me will defend me." Simple, direct, unapologetic. Translation: if you don't like what my friends say about you, maybe look at why they're saying it. Then comes the knockout line. "I am just asking you, Kody, to keep your opinions of my friends and me to yourself. If you go on the attack on my best friend, then I will definitely go on the attack back. No hesitation. No fear. Just boundaries." And Christine, who once struggled to speak without being interrupted, can't contain herself. She laughs. She covers her mouth. She beams. Then she says what fans everywhere were thinking. Meri was great. That was awesome. It wasn't about rivalry. It wasn't about past tension. It was about recognition. One woman watching, another finally refused to be silenced. For years, viewers watched Meri sit quietly, defend Kody, absorb rejection, hope for scraps of affection. But in that moment, she didn't ask for validation. She demanded respect. And maybe that's why Christine reacted the way she did. Because when you've survived the same dynamic, when you've been talked over, corrected, minimized, spiritually guilt, watching someone break free feels personal. Season 20 wasn't just an apology tour. It became something else entirely, a reckoning. And in one unforgettable exchange, Meri Brown showed that the woman who once waited for crumbs is finally done begging for a seat at the table. And Christine? She didn't just watch it happen. She celebrated it. The joy in Christine's voice wasn't subtle. It wasn't masked. It wasn't filtered for politeness. It was unmistakable. And no, it wasn't schadenfreude. It wasn't petty revenge. It wasn't finally he's getting embarrassed. It was pride. Pure, unfiltered pride in watching another woman finally refuse to be diminished. When Christine said, "I love it," she wasn't celebrating Kody being cornered. She was celebrating Meri finding her spine. She just put him in his place. Christine added, almost glowing. She was like, "This isn't for me. This is all for you." And that right there? That's the entire shift. Meri saw through it. Kody didn't walk into that meeting to repair the damage. He walked in to relieve his own conscience, to soften his image, to close the chapter in a way that made him feel less responsible for how brutally it ended. And Christine clocked it instantly. Then she delivered the line that sliced through the entire interaction. Once he started talking about her friends, the conversation really was over. Bingo. The moment he attacked the people who defended Meri, the apology became meaningless. Because you cannot apologize for harming someone while simultaneously demanding they silence anyone who acknowledges that harm. That's not accountability. That's control in a softer tone. And Christine knows the difference. Why this moment matters, let's zoom out for a second. This wasn't just reality TV drama. This wasn't just a spicy tell-all clip designed for ratings. This was a woman watching another woman reclaim her voice after decades of being conditioned not to use it. Meri married Kody in 1990. She was 20 years old. 20. For 32 years, she navigated a marriage that slowly hollowed out. Intimacy reportedly stopped around 2007. Affection faded. Emotional connection eroded. At one point, Kody openly admitted he no longer saw the relationship as romantic. Eventually, he even said he never truly loved her the way she deserved. And layered over all of that, infertility. Meri carried the weight of having only one child in a plural family structure that revolved around numbers. Expansion. Legacy. She internalized the narrative that she wasn't enough. For decades, she tried to fix it. She tried to be better. Softer. More agreeable. More patient. More loyal. More understanding. And every time she tried to express pain, the pattern repeated. She was told she was misunderstanding. She was told she was overreacting. She was told she was remembering things incorrectly. She was told her feelings were the problem. Dismissal, deflection, gaslighting. And here's the part people can't ignore. Christine lived that pattern too. For 25 years. When Christine voiced hurt, she was told she was being dramatic. When she asked for more partnership, she was told she wasn't loyal enough. When she finally left, she was framed as giving up. So when Christine watched Meri calmly say, "You're not going to shut me down anymore," she wasn't just reacting as a viewer. She was recognizing a breakthrough. That moment when you stop accepting someone else's version of your own life. That moment when you say, "I know what happened. I know what I felt. And you don't get to rewrite it." That's why Christine's reaction hit so deeply. It wasn't rivalry. It wasn't nostalgia. It wasn't solidarity for show. It was recognition. The friends he tried to silence. Now, let's talk about the people Kody clearly finds threatening, Meri's friends. Because they are central to this entire shift in power. Jen Sullivan has been by Meri's side through everything. The catfishing scandal, the unraveling of the spiritual marriage, the emotional rebuilding. She co-runs Lizzie's Heritage Inn with Meri in Parowan, Utah. She's not just a friend. She's a business partner and a witness to the evolution. And during season 20, when financial disparities were brought to light, when it was revealed that Meri contributed equally to the family fund, yet inequities existed in how benefits were distributed, Jen didn't hesitate. You paid equally. You paid equally. Simple validation. But for someone who has been conditioned to doubt her own perception, that kind of affirmation is seismic. It confirms what you felt but were told wasn't real. It says, you're not crazy. You're not exaggerating. The imbalance existed. Brandy, another close friend, has also been vocal. Together, Jen and Brandy formed something Meri didn't fully have for years inside the marriage, an external support system, perspective, accountability, reality check energy. And here's the uncomfortable truth. When someone has spent decades shaping the narrative, controlling the tone, steering the story, outside voices feel dangerous. Because they disrupt isolation. They offer clarity. They break the spell. When Kody demanded Meri silence her friends, he wasn't just irritated. He was threatened. Because once someone has community, once someone has people reflecting truth back to them, control becomes impossible. And that's what we witnessed in that apology meeting. Not just a failed reconciliation, but the visible collapse of a dynamic that only worked when one voice dominated. Meri didn't raise her voice. She didn't insult. She didn't escalate. She simply refused to shrink. And Christine, watching from that studio couch, understood exactly how monumental that is. Because sometimes the loudest victory isn't yelling. It's staying steady and finally saying no more. Controllers demand silence from support systems. Manipulators don't just argue with the person they hurt. They go after anyone who helps that person see clearly. So when Kody demanded that Meri silence her friends, it wasn't random frustration. It wasn't wounded pride. It was textbook. He wasn't claiming her friends were spreading lies. He was upset because they weren't. That's the difference. When outside voices confirm what you've been feeling for years, control starts slipping. Isolation cracks. The narrative shifts. And that shift is exactly what we saw unfold. Now, to really understand why Christine's reaction carried so much weight, we have to talk about something layered and complicated. Christine and Meri. Because their dynamic adds emotional depth to that studio moment. They were sister wives for 25 years. 25 years of shared holidays. Shared kitchens. Shared financial stress. Shared husband time. Shared pregnancies and heartbreaks. Shared chaos. They raised children in the same family system, but they were never deeply close.
Christine has been honest about that.
She said they had fun in earlier years, but over time, their paths stopped aligning. That distance didn't happen overnight. Meri has openly admitted she was difficult in the early years of the family. She struggled with jealousy. She struggled with sharing Kody. She struggled with watching Janelle and Christine have babies while she faced infertility. And imagine that emotional terrain. You're 20 years old, newly married, trying to build a plural family. And suddenly you're watching your husband expand his life, while your own motherhood journey stalls. That kind of pain doesn't disappear. It hardens. Christine once said it plainly. They were married to a man who was a lot of work. Now imagine multiple women trying to survive emotionally while competing for scraps of attention from the same man. That environment breeds friction. And some of that friction never healed. Janelle and Meri's relationship, in particular, was layered with history long before plural marriage entered the picture. Janelle had been married to Meri's brother before marrying Kody.
Think about that.
Your brother's ex-wife becomes your sister wife. That's not a small emotional footnote. That's complex from day one. During the tell-all, Meri even pointed out that people forget there were real emotions tied to that dynamic. Real discomfort. Real adjustment. And it didn't stop there. Kody and Janelle originally planned their wedding on Janelle's birthday, which also happened to be Kody and Meri's anniversary. When Meri expressed discomfort, she felt dismissed. They were like, "It doesn't matter. We'll just celebrate it a different day." Only Kody's mother intervened and suggested they move the date. But the message had already been sent. Your feelings are inconvenient. From the very beginning, Meri learned that her emotional boundaries were negotiable. Christine witnessed all of this. She lived inside that system too. She saw how Meri was treated. She saw the dismissals. She also experienced her own version of being minimized and sidelined. So when Christine chose not to invite Meri to her wedding to David, it wasn't a public snub.
It was a boundary.
Meri herself said she wasn't hurt. She wished Christine well. She acknowledged they had shared a lot of life, a lot of fun in the past, but their paths simply don't align anymore. They're not enemies. They're not in active conflict. They're cordial, respectful,
separate.
And that's what makes Christine's reaction during the tell-all so powerful. Because she didn't have to cheer. She didn't have to smile. She didn't have to validate Meri's strength. But she did. Not because they're best friends. Not because they're rebuilding sisterhood. But because when you've survived the same dynamic, when you've felt your voice shrink inside the same marriage, you recognize the moment someone finally refuses to shrink anymore. Christine wasn't reacting as Meri's ally. She was reacting as someone who understands exactly how hard it is to say, "You're not going to shut me down anymore." And sometimes respect doesn't come from closeness. It comes from shared survival. Here's what makes Christine's reaction so powerful and, honestly, so beautiful. You don't have to be close to someone to recognize their courage. You don't have to be best friends to celebrate when someone finds their voice. Christine and Meri aren't bonded the way they once were. They're not calling each other daily. They're not rebuilding sister-wife closeness. Their lives have moved in different directions. But courage? Courage is universal. Christine's smile didn't come from intimacy. It came from shared experience. From knowing exactly what it costs to finally look Kody Brown in the eye and say, "No," because that no doesn't come cheap. It comes after years of self-doubt. After years of minimizing your own pain. After years of being told your feelings are dramatic, irrational, disloyal. Christine knows the emotional price of defying him. And that's why her support felt different. It wasn't friendship. It was solidarity. The kind that exists between people who survived the same storm. And sometimes that kind of solidarity is more powerful than closeness. What Kody actually wanted now, let's strip this down. What was this apology tour really about? It wasn't repair. It was reputation. By season 19 and early season 20, the narrative around Kody had shifted dramatically. The audience saw three women, Christine, Janelle, and Meri, telling strikingly similar stories. He prioritized Robin. He withdrew emotionally. He punished children who didn't follow his COVID rules. He reframed conflicts so he was always the injured party. Public opinion turned. Social media didn't just critique him, it roasted him. Even some of his own children spoke out publicly, expressing disappointment and hurt. Then suddenly, we see a softer Kody. He appears on Special Forces, emotional, reflective, talking about being a flawed father, admitting he should have handled things differently. And right on cue comes the apology tour. Carefully filmed, carefully structured, carefully presented as a journey toward accountability. But look closer at each conversation. With Christine, he insisted she acknowledge that he once loved her right in front of David. A strange demand, a self-serving moment disguised as closure. With Janelle, he apologized, but spent much of the time defending his decisions and subtly reframing her pain as misunderstanding. With Meri, he admitted being toxic, then immediately demanded she silence her friends. Every single apology followed the same pattern, a vague admission, followed by a qualification, followed by a condition, followed by a subtle redirection of blame. I'm sorry, but I regret, however. I shouldn't have, but you also. That's not accountability. That's negotiation. Real apologies don't come with performance clauses. They don't demand validation in return. They don't require the injured party to clean up your image. They don't attack the support system that helps someone heal. Kody's meetings weren't about transformation. They were about optics. He wanted to be seen as the bigger person. He wanted credit for showing up. He wanted the narrative to shift from villain to misunderstood man trying his best. But here's the problem. You can't control a narrative when the people you once controlled have found their voices. Christine already left. Janelle already detached. And now Meri, the last thread tying him to the original family structure, refused to play along. He wanted acknowledgement. He wanted appreciation. He wanted them to say, "Thank you for apologizing." Instead, Meri said no. No to the conditions. No to the control. No to silencing the people who stood by her. And in that refusal, the entire apology tore unraveled. Because reconciliation without humility is just strategy. And Meri wasn't interested in strategy anymore. She was interested in truth. And that's why Christine smiled the way she did. Not because Kody was losing, but because another woman finally stopped trying to win his approval. Meri didn't explode.
She didn't cry.
She didn't storm out. She didn't raise her voice. She simply refused.
Calm. Clear.
Steady. You're not going to shut me down anymore. That wasn't just a sentence.
It was a thesis statement.
Because real accountability requires one fundamental thing. The person who is harmed gets to speak their truth, without the person who caused the harm dictating how it's delivered.
No tone policing. No redirecting.
No conditions. Just truth. The pattern Kody can't escape. Here's what the apology tour accidentally exposed. It revealed the exact dynamic that destroyed all 3 marriages in the first place. Every conversation followed the same blueprint. Kody centers himself. Kody explains his feelings. Kody reframes the narrative. Kody becomes defensive when gratitude isn't offered. And that's precisely what drove them away. Christine left because everything became about what he needed from her, emotionally, spiritually, physically, while he consistently dismissed what she needed from him. She once admitted, "I was so focused on him, and it makes me disgusted with myself." That sentence is devastating, because it describes what happens when you spend decades orbiting someone who never considers your axis. Janelle left because she realized she was being played. Even Kody admitted he manipulated her loyalty. He leveraged her devotion. He relied on her independence while pouring attention and resources into Robin. She was expected to understand, to endure, to rationalize, until she stopped. And Meri held on the longest, because hope can be the strongest tether. When they moved to Flagstaff, Kody reportedly told her, "This will be a good time to have a new beginning for us." He kept the possibility alive. Just enough to keep her invested. Just enough to keep her waiting. Just enough to avoid fully closing the door. But never enough to truly repair anything. The apology tour was framed as growth. What it actually showed was stagnation. Same patterns. Same defensiveness. Same inability to fully hear the women speaking. But something else changed. The women. Christine set boundaries. She brought David. She called the apology weird to Kody's face. She refused to entertain nostalgic, romantic storytelling as closure. Janelle listened politely and chose herself. She didn't need his apology to move forward. She had already detached. And Meri refused to be shut down. She defended her friends. She named the performance. She stayed steady. The apology tour didn't prove Kody had changed. It proved the women had. Viewer reaction when Tell All Part 3 aired. Social media lit up. Christine's reaction to Meri became one of the most talked about moments of the entire special. Viewers weren't just focused on the confrontation. They were focused on the smile, on the pride, on the solidarity. Fans commented that it was powerful to see Christine support Meri despite their distance. Others said they wished reconciliation were possible but respected that both women had chosen boundaries instead. The consensus? Meri found her voice. And people were proud. But there was a deeper takeaway. Christine's support meant something because it didn't come from closeness. It came from understanding. It showed that you can acknowledge someone's strength without needing them in your daily life. You can celebrate someone's growth without rebuilding a broken relationship. Solidarity doesn't require intimacy. And that's a powerful message. When you leave a toxic situation, you don't owe your former abuser reconciliation. You don't owe fellow survivors lifelong friendship. You owe yourself honesty. And sometimes, from a distance, you can still cheer when someone else finally claims theirs. The 32-year journey to fully grasp the weight of "you're not going to shut me down anymore," you have to look at the timeline. Meri marries Kody at 20 years old. She believes in plural marriage. She believes in the dream. Janelle joins the family. Adjustment begins. Christine joins. The family grows. So, do the emotional layers. Meri gives birth to Leon, her only biological child. For years after that, she tries to have more children. Month after month. Year after year. Silence. A miscarriage at 10 weeks. Around this time, intimacy reportedly fades. The distance widens. Sister Wives premieres. The family enters the public eye. Robyn enters the marriage. Meri legally divorces Kody, so he can adopt Robyn's children. Robyn offers to be Meri's surrogate, a storyline that stretches across seasons, heavy with emotion, complicated with power dynamics. And through every phase, expansion, heartbreak, public scrutiny, spiritual restructuring, Meri stayed. Hoping, adjusting, enduring. So when she finally looked at him in 2026 and said calmly, "You're not going to shut me down anymore," it wasn't about that one conversation. It was about 32 years. 32 years of being talked over. 32 years of being minimized. 32 years of trying to be enough. And in that single sentence, she reclaimed all of it. Not loudly. Not angrily. Just clearly. And sometimes clarity is the most powerful rebellion of all. Let understood full weight of Meri's moment. We have to finish the timeline. 2013, after years of infertility and heartbreak, Meri finally says yes to IVF. She's ready to try again. Ready to risk hope one more time. And Kody says no. A decade later, in 2023, he admits he's actually glad they didn't have more children because the marriage wasn't healthy. Let that sink in. She was willing to fight for the relationship. He was already mentally gone. 2015, the catfishing scandal. Meri forms an online connection with someone she believes is a man. It turns out to be a woman manipulating her. The narrative becomes, Meri cheated. Meri betrayed the family. Meri failed. But very few people stop to ask the harder question: what makes a married woman that emotionally vulnerable in the first place? Isolation, rejection, loneliness, being told you're unwanted for years. From 2015 to 2022, Meri stays. Even while Kody publicly says he doesn't love her, isn't attracted to her, doesn't want to work on the marriage, she stays anyway. 2023, she finally obtains a spiritual release on the grounds of abandonment. Not anger, not revenge. Abandonment. 2024 and 2025, Meri rebuilds. She dates. She invests in her businesses. She leans into her friendships with Jen and Brandy. She starts choosing herself. And then January 2026 arrives. She sits across from the man she gave 32 years to. And instead of begging for scraps, she says calmly, "You're not going to shut me down anymore." 32 years from "I do" to "I'm done." 32 years from "I believe you love me," to "I know what this was." 32 years from "I'll do anything to make this work," to "You don't control my voice." That's not impulsive. That's not dramatic. That's decades of conditioning being slowly, painfully unlearned. And Christine, who dismantled her own 25-year version of that conditioning, recognized exactly what she was witnessing. The contrast with Robin, now we have to address the other layer. Robin, the fourth wife, the only remaining wife. Throughout the series, Robin positioned herself as Meri's ally, her friend, the empathetic bridge between wives. During the tell-all, Robin expressed confusion. She claimed she didn't understand why Meri pulled away. She suggested Meri suddenly became angry at Kody and unfairly lumped her in. But let's examine the timeline. In 2011, Robin offers to be Meri's surrogate, an emotional, life-altering offer. A storyline that stretches across seasons. A symbol of hope. In 2013, Kody shuts down IVF. In 2023, he admits he never wanted more children with Meri anyway. So the obvious question becomes, when Robin made that surrogate offer, what did she actually know? If she knew Kody had no intention of rebuilding intimacy, the offer becomes cruel optimism. If she didn't know, then she was making life-changing promises without understanding the true state of the marriage. Either way, Meri carried the emotional fallout. Then there's the financial layer. When the family moved to Flagstaff, Meri contributed proceeds from her Las Vegas home to help purchase Robin's house. Janelle did the same. Robin and Kody lived in that home. Meri lived alone. Later, when Coyote Pass sold, repayment discussions became complicated. The optics were clear. Robin benefited from a system where Meri sacrificed. Add to that the pattern both Janelle and Meri openly joked about, that Kody's type leaned toward submissive, shy, agreeable. Robin rarely challenged him publicly, rarely confronted him directly, rarely disrupted his authority. Meanwhile, Christine pushed. Janelle questioned. Meri, in earlier years, resisted. And who received the majority of husband time? The larger home? The visible affection? So when Robin says she doesn't understand why Meri distanced herself, it feels incomplete. Meri didn't randomly lump Robin in. She recognized that Robin benefited from the same imbalance that slowly erased her. The question of reconciliation after the tell-all aired, one question dominated. Will Christine and Meri reconcile? Probably not. And that's okay. Christine has said their paths don't align. Meri has said she's not hurt by the distance. They're cordial, respectful, occasionally in touch, especially through shared connections like Janelle. But they're not rebuilding sister-wife intimacy. And that's wisdom. Not every shared trauma requires lifelong closeness. Not every history demands present-day connection. You can survive something together and still heal separately. Christine cheering for Meri wasn't an invitation to restart a friendship. It was recognition. It was respect. It was, I see what that took. And that kind of acknowledgement is often healthier than forced reconciliation for optics. It's honest. It's boundaried. It's real. The bigger picture, now zoom out. Beyond reality TV. Beyond ratings. Beyond family drama. This story represents something universal. A woman spends 3 decades in a relationship where she's told her feelings are inconvenient, where she's made to believe she's too sensitive, too jealous, too difficult, not enough. She adjusts herself over and over again to fit someone else's comfort, until one day,
She stops.
and she says, without rage, without chaos, "You're not going to shut me down anymore." That's not just a television moment. That's transformation. And whether you like Meri, dislike her, relate to Christine, sympathize with Janelle, or question Robin, that sentence stands on its own. It marks the end of silence. And sometimes, the quietest refusal carries the loudest freedom. This is the part people can't ignore. A woman spends decades in a marriage where she's financially penalized for circumstances beyond her control, where infertility becomes a quiet mark against her, where money she contributes doesn't always circle back fairly, where she's emotionally abandoned, yet expected to remain loyal, silent, patient. Then she leaves. She rebuilds. She finds friends who validate her reality. She starts speaking plainly about what actually happened. And when the same man who dismissed her for years tries to interrupt her again,
She says no.
not angrily, not theatrically, just firmly. And that moment stops being about sister wives. It becomes about every woman who's ever been told she's too sensitive, too dramatic, too emotional, too much. Every person who was gaslit into questioning their own memory. Every survivor who finally realized they don't owe silence to someone who hurt them. You're not going to shut me down anymore. That's universal. That's the sound of someone who spent decades shrinking themselves to fit someone else's comfort and finally decided to take up the space they always deserved. And Christine's reaction? That's every person who has been there before, recognizing how much courage it takes to stand still and not fold. This is why the moment resonated. It wasn't really about Kody. It wasn't even fully about Meri.
It was about autonomy.
The Sister Wives audience isn't just watching a show about plural marriage anymore. They're watching women reclaim their agency after years of being told they didn't deserve it. The aftermath since the tell-all aired, the trajectories are telling. Meri is thriving. She's running her businesses, traveling, dating, posting openly about authenticity, and refusing to dim her light. Christine is celebrating her life with David Woolley. She's been transparent that what she feels now is different, healthier, than what she experienced before. She's focused forward. Janelle is peaceful, not chasing romance, not fighting for attention, simply existing in a space where love doesn't feel like competition. And Kody? Still married to Robin. Reports suggest their relationship has strain. Robin herself has admitted they're fighting for stability. Kody remains estranged from several adult children. The patriarch who once presided over a four-wife household now presides over something much smaller. The apology tour didn't restore anything. It clarified everything. It clarified who he is, who the women have become, and what real accountability actually looks like. Meri's refusal wasn't about winning that conversation. It was about setting a precedent for the rest of her life. I will not be silenced again. Christine's celebration wasn't gossip or rivalry. It was validation. Prioritizing yourself over someone else's comfort is not selfish. It's survival. Together, without being close, without sharing holidays, without rebuilding friendship, they demonstrated what freedom from a toxic dynamic looks like. You speak your truth. Someone who understands recognizes it. You both move forward without needing approval from the person who tried to keep you small. That's the real ending. Not reconciliation. Not a tidy bow. Not a fairy tale redemption arc. Just women living authentically, supporting each other from a distance, refusing to shrink. The sisterhood nobody expected. Here's the irony. The show sold sisterhood.
Unity.
Shared purpose. Multiplying love. But what we often saw was competition.
Competition for time.
Competition for resources. Competition for emotional validation from one man who struggled to provide it equally. Christine admitted it. They were married to someone who required constant management. When all your energy goes toward navigating one demanding dynamic, there's little left for genuine sisterhood. Janelle and Meri were cordial at best for years. Christine and Robin's trust fractured. Meri and Robin's closeness dissolved once Meri stopped accepting her assigned role. These weren't women united. They were women surviving the same structure. So when Christine cheers for Meri now, it's not the marketed version of sisterhood. It's something more mature. Recognition. We survived the same storm. We healed differently. I see what that took. That's deeper than forced friendship. They don't need proximity to respect each other. They don't need reconciliation to validate growth. That's real sisterhood. The kind built on truth, not performance. The lesson for viewers: the response to this moment revealed something important. You don't have to maintain relationships with everyone who shared your trauma. Trauma bonding often gets mistaken for lifelong obligation. But Christine and Meri model something healthier. You can acknowledge shared history without forcing present connection. You can wish someone well from a distance. You can cheer for their victories without re-entering their life. That's not cold. That's boundaries. It's permission for anyone who's left a toxic workplace, a broken marriage, a rigid community, or a painful friend group. Healing sometimes requires space, and space doesn't negate respect. The evolution of Meri, if you compare season 1 Meri to season 20 Meri, the difference is undeniable. Early Meri was defensive, guarded, struggling with jealousy and insecurity.
She's owned that.
But context matters. When you're constantly fighting for validation, you become sharp around the edges. Season 20 Meri is different. Grounded.
Direct. Calm.
She doesn't beg. She doesn't perform loyalty. She doesn't negotiate her dignity. She simply states her boundary. And for anyone watching who has ever been shut down or dismissed, that moment felt personal. Christine's reaction gave viewers something subtle but powerful. You can celebrate someone's freedom without needing to be part of their life. You can honor someone's growth even if your relationship with them ended. When you see someone finally claim the voice they were denied, cheer for them. When you witness someone refuse to be small, celebrate it. Even from afar. Because recognition, respect, and solidarity matter more than forced closeness ever could. Christine cheering for Meri isn't the rebirth of a sister-wife bond. It's something quieter. Two women who survived the same storm, sailed to different shores, and can still look across the water and say, I see you. And that's real sisterhood.